Welcome back to another insightful and exciting episode of Me and My Health Up. I'm your host, Anthony Harcher. I'm a clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. The purpose of this podcast is to enhance and enlighten your well-being. And today we have a special guest, and it's Stellar Hawke. Stella is studying clinical nutrition. She has done a degree already in food science and nutrition, and she's now getting her clinical experience so she can train as a clinician in nutrition. And she shares her insights around eating disorders, women's health, and how you can create a better relationship with food, a better relationship with your body. So without much further ado, I'd love to welcome you into this discussion I'm having with Stellar Hawke. Welcome on the Me and My Health Up podcast. How are you, Stella?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Fantastic. So great to have you on the show. And I'm really keen for you to brief the listeners as to a bit about you and your interests and what we're going to be speaking about.
Yeah, so I have already done a Bachelor of Human Nutrition and Food Science, but I kind of wanted to take it a bit further. So I'm currently doing a Bachelor of Clinical Nutrition, which is, as part of that, I have to do some placement hours. So I've been doing that with you. And a really great idea that you came up with was me coming on the podcast just to, pick your brain and pick my brain a bit. I'm a very curious person. I do ask a lot of questions. So this is probably going to be really beneficial for me and for the listeners. I get, a lot of friends asking me various questions, especially relating to this and the topic that I wanted to speak to you about, the gut, mental health, body image. It's a very big area at the moment, especially with my age and my demographic. So that's kind of why I wanted to pick it, because I also get asked it a lot. So asking you, especially from also a male perspective and what you've experienced in clinic yourself, I feel like will be really beneficial.
Yeah, fantastic. Great introduction, Stella. You're like a pro. First time on a podcast, and you're nailing it. So thank you for coming on. Thank you for showing courage in stepping into a space that you haven't stepped into before. And it's so great to have you on the show. And you'll probably come back. I reckon the listeners will want you back on the show. So let's get into the podcast, and I'll let you start, and then we'll just go with a conversation.
Yeah, so my first question was, I guess it's becoming a lot more studies are coming out now about the gut-brain axis. Probably, 15, 20 years ago, there was no sort of research into this. No one really knew enough about it, but now it's really taking off. So I guess, what would you describe as the gut-brain axis, and why is this so important for mental health?
Yeah, for me, it's a highway between the gut, and the brain. So it's a linkage, a connection between the two, and it's the way in which they talk to each other. So it's like they travel, or send signals from one side to the other side via the vagus nerve, and that's the 10th cranial nerve. Which the vagus nerve is the term vagus is described as a wandering nerve. So it actually connects with many of the organs within our body from the brain. And it's a really important connection. And it's a connection that is not well looked after. We generally have a strong one-way signal and not a great return signal. So what I help clients with is really, you could say it's the vagus tone, or be able to activate the vagus nerve in the parasympathetic response. So the parasympathetic being the rest and digest. And our stomach or our gut works really well in the rest and digest state. It's not turned on when we're stressed and in that sympathetic state. So I spend a lot of my time helping my clients to really relax, particularly around before eating. In today's world, it's very fast paced and everything's go, go, go. And I just don't have time to eat. I've got so many things to do, and we don't prioritize it, which is really disappointing, because the connection with food is a very important relationship, and it's often one that is dismissed, abused, and as a result, eating disorders come about because we lose the connection with food. I'll give an example, and it's a bit of a barbaric story. Is I normally don't eat at night, and my family do, and they're having T-bone steaks, and there's a T-bone steak that's left over, and I'm thinking, like, I normally have dinner the next day, and so dinner's the one I don't have, and I just like that sort of fast till breakfast. And I was eyeing out the steak; it was looking great, and I was thinking, I prefer to have it now because it just looks so good, and I don't think it'll be as nice tomorrow reheated. And so I walked around and I just picked up the steak with my hands, and then I just started eating the steak. And like, as much as people might have this sort of barbaric Fred Flintstone sort of image of someone just ripping away at a bone or ripping or tearing the flesh off the bone, it was a very intimate experience. And I must say, during the whole thing, I was completely engaged because I was touching the food, so I could feel the texture of the food. I was obviously tasting it and chewing it, and I think just that real intimate connection, which we're lost through cutlery, really added so much more to the experience. And afterwards, after that steak, I felt totally satisfied, 100% satisfied. Normally, after meals, when I eat with my knife and fork, there's a sense that there's something missing, right? And like you generally, that something missing is something sweet or something to finish the meal. And I did not have that feeling. And I normally have that feeling after eating a meal. And I really relate back to it just being an all immersive, connecting all senses to what I was doing. And I've gone on a bit of a tangent here, but it's an important tangent because that relationship with food is so important to the gut brain axis. Because what happens in today's world, we overthink nutrition, we overthink food, and we've really lost that connection with the gut. And we actually don't eat in terms of how we feel. We really eat based on logic. So it's, oh, this has got that many calories. Oh, this has got protein and this much protein. Oh, it's got slightly too much fat or slightly too much sugar. Oh, I can't have that. And we've lost the connection. So we see food today as just numbers, as macros, as micros, but it's a whole lot more than that. And I think one of the biggest ways in which we can overcome eating disorders is get that love back for food, get that love back. But in saying that, it's not that easy. Okay. So there's obviously a lot of past issues associated with food and the experiences. And so it's just starting on that journey, and it's a step by step process. So anyone out there that's struggling with disordered eating, uh, there's certainly hope. It's just a matter of engaging with the right practitioner that really resonates with you and their philosophies as to how they're going to help you get back that love for food and that reconnection in a way that's positive and in a way that works for you, because everyone's different. So I went on a big tangent there, Stella, but hopefully it answered the question.
Yeah, no, I think it's very true that, especially with all these, Instagram accounts and Facebook pages, and now with even TikTok, people promoting, their day in the life and what I eat, and they're so focused and promoting on just, well, you need to be in a calorie deficit, and it doesn't matter about, the quality of the food, which at the end of the day it does. The quality is so important, and you don't, personally, I'd rather be eating a steak rather than a highly processed concoction of ingredients, just so that I'm, only eating 200 calories, but I'm getting 20 grams of protein. And I think that's where a lot of the translation is lost, and people are quite confused, and they are now just so focused on the numbers, like, oh, that's a bit too many calories and that's too many carbs, and people are very, carb phobic. A lot of family members, and seeing a lot of people come into work, and they are very terrified of these numbers. But you know if you're eating these whole foods, it's going to be so much more beneficial than, it may have 400 calories, but at the end of the day, that 400 calories is going to serve you a lot better in terms of the micronutrients and, the antioxidants, compared to the lower carb, lower calorie alternative, which is full of fillers and seed oils and all sorts of ingredients that we don't need. And when you think about it, with the gut brain axis and all the serotonin and dopamine actually being produced in your gut, and if you're fueling it with these poor quality foods, then of course you might feel worse off mentally, because if you're feeding your gut happy, like, whole foods, you'll be getting better, quality neurotransmitters, and then you'll be feeling better about yourself, versus, you know, reducing your intake of calories and carbs and all these great foods just for the sake of the numbers, focusing on the numbers.
And you raise a really good point there, Stella, and it's around that labeling or judgment of food. Like, it's sort of, okay, oh, I'm having this naughty or this guilty pleasure, and I shouldn't be doing this, then that brings up all these emotional, all these emotions associated with having something guilty, and then it brings up past experiences, and then you get very emotional, and that emotion really affects our ability to assimilate what we're eating. So it could be really great what we're eating, and I often see people with textbook diets, like perfect diets, but they're sick, and it's part of the reason is because they're not assimilating that nourishment, and it could be simply because they're eating in a stress state, or they're just judging themselves and feeling guilty about what they're doing, and not having that engagement between an alignment between the brain and the gut that allows them to fully uptake and assimilate the nourishment in that food. So I think that's a really important point, is that when we judge the food and see it as numbers, then ultimately we then start creating some emotions around it, and that emotions can put us in a more sympathetic state, which doesn't, and this is part of the reason why people have digestive issues, is because they're not in a relaxed state to digest the food sits there, and they feel bloated and full, and it just sits there, and they start getting tired, and the digestion isn't happening. So I think you raise a really great point, Stella. So yeah, it's really about seeing the food for as it is, and not judging it, not labeling it, and that doesn't create, because what the emotions do is make us feel not great. So we don't get the dopamine, serotonin hit, like you said. We don't read those signals. Those signals aren't coming to the brain, and we feel dissatisfied. We feel and actually worse off, because we're judging ourselves and thinking we shouldn't be having this naughty treat, and therefore we're looking for ways to pick ourselves up. And so what do? We just eat more meat, eat more of it, as opposed to being satisfied with less. And I often find, like I tell my clients, I say, don't judge the food, embrace it, no matter what it is. If you embrace it and engage with it, you'll be satisfied with less of it. And so we can have these I don't like calling them treats. They're just what they are, but we can have them. It's just we need to not judge it and not put a guilt trip on us. We need to eat it, immerse, and really, love it, and then we'll be satisfied with a whole lot less, as opposed to having two bites of the chocolate bar and think, oh, I might as well eat the whole thing now, because I've started.
Yeah, I think in telling people, educating them on the intuitive eating, if you feel hungry, just have something. You don't have to have a massive meal, but if you're going to punish yourself and say, no, I'm going to hold off, and then by the time you get to that hangry state, then you're going to be eating more. And I think that a lot of people forget, listen to your body. Your body will tell you, when it's hungry. And I think that part of the intuitive eating, if you know how to eat intuitively and listening to your body, that's also a massive part of building a healthy relationship with food and avoiding, these body image, like, problems and body, like, eating disorders, which I think it's definitely a growing issue, especially, like I said, among women and my age demographic, and especially with social media and all the filters and, the surgeries, all these unrealistic, societal expectations, and people thinking that they have to be super skinny and that's the healthiest, thing that they can do. that's not always the case. You have a totally different body, genetics, muscles, like bone mass compared to the person next to you. And I think a lot of people forget that when they just see on social media, well, this worked for that person, so I'm just going to do that. I'm going to eat the same calories as what they're eating, but at the end of the day, that might not work for you because your body is totally different. So eating in tune with your body is so important.
It's that's a fantastic point, because it's very much that connection, and knowing that thyself, and having that real love and self acceptance. Because if that's not there, then people are always looking to be someone else if they're not accepting and loving thyself. So it's sort of like, you once you love yourself, then you don't want to be anyone else. Whereas when we have a distaste for a particular part of our body, then we're always comparing ourselves to others and wishing we had what they've got, and then we're feeling inferior, and that lower self-esteem and self-worth, and then all the emotions associated with that, and that can result in emotional eating, just thinking, well, what's the point? I can't have that, and I'm ugly or whatever, and so this self-loathing and lack of self-acceptance can really just feed into a spiral out of control. Like, I recently had a client who was loathing her body, so just didn't like hardly anything. And I said to her, I said, well, what would you like it to be like? And so she went on social media, onto an Instagram account, and pulled up the Instagram account. And I said, show me this person as, who you'd like to be. And she brought up the account, and I saw the person, and I said, let's go through. Well, I took her through this exercise, saying, well, if I had a magic wand and said, but Shazam, you're now this person. I said to her, I said, what would be the drawbacks of being this person? Because she was fantasizing about being this person. And when we fantasize, we only see the upside. We're conscious of the upside, but we're unconscious of the drawbacks. And so what I wanted to do for her was say, yes, you've got your fantasy now. Let's start balancing your perceptions and look for the drawbacks of having that figure. And she initially started to look and thought, oh no, it's great, because she was so polarized in her thinking that she just looked and knew all the upsides, but had never looked at balancing her perceptions, bringing to her conscious awareness of the downsides of looking like this Instagram body, right? And so then she started thinking, oh, it would then I'd attract sexual attention, unwanted sexual attention. I wouldn't like people, yelling out the window, whistling, and, as I walk down the street, because that's not the attention I want. And then she started, and that sort of started then a cascade of things that she thought, wow, if I had this, I would just test this side of it. And so it really started balancing her perception about this body image that she desired. And by the end of the exercise, she said, no, I don't want to be her. And then I started asking her what were the benefits of the form that she had in herself. Like, because what she's conscious of is the downside of certain parts, like her chest, her jawline, her lips. She labeled all the features. And so what I asked her, what were the upsides to get her to balance her perception, bring her to her conscious awareness of what she was unconscious of. And she started to find the upsides of what she, or these areas that she could only see had downsides. And then, so she then started to appreciate what she had, because she could see the benefits of her form, of what she had in her body, and start to appreciate and love her body for the way it is. And that was a really useful exercise for her, because she walked out feeling a whole lot better about herself, and was less, going forward. Like, I actually haven't heard from her. She said to me, look, this is going to be the longest break we've had. I don't know how I'm going to go, but she must be going really well, because she hasn't reached out. And obviously, she had these grave concerns and, struggles. And I'm really great to, the fact that she's now flying free and loving being who she is.
I think a lot of people forget, they lose um, the they see this, this Instagram model, this person, this body that they want to be, and they think that once they get, if I get to this weight, and if I get to this, diameter in my chest and all this kind of stuff, I think they think, well, that's it, I'm going to be happy, and they lose the actual larger picture of things. And it's, you could be giving up so many parts of yourself that make you you, not just physically, but your personality, just to attain this certain body image. And they think, well, once I'm there, everything's going to be great and I'm going to be happy. But I think that, you know, there's always ways that you can work on yourself, and it doesn't, your body image, what you look like, doesn't determine who you are as a person on the inside. And lots of people get lost, just so focused on, no, if I am this weight, I will be happy and everything will be better. And people spend so much energy stressing and have so much anxiety about this. What have you seen in clinic, the effects of the stress and anxiety on especially gut health?
It's huge. It's like the whole gut function is just not working. So they typically express in ways of what medical diagnosis of irritable bowel syndrome. And so they'll come to me with all sorts of digestive discomfort. So bloating's a typical one, and excessive bloating, excessive wind production, reflux is another one. Bowel motions that are either extreme, loose, or not coming out at all. And so it's very much their digestive system's just not working. It's not working the way it should. It's either going too fast or too slow. And ultimately, if it's going too fast, then we're not getting the uptake of the nourishment of the food. It's coming in and just going out. If it's going too slow, then we're obviously not getting the toxins out of our body, and toxins are building up in our systems, and that's not good either. So both of them will ultimately result in illness if not resolved. And so it's really important that if anyone's anxious, no matter what you're anxious about, it will affect your gut, because the anxiousness arises from fear of something, either the fear of loss of something or the fear of gain of something you don't want. And so it's driven by either one of those two. So you've either lost a relationship that you didn't want to lose, or the person that you don't want in your life is still around and hanging around and frustrating you and irritating you. And so that, the loss of what you want or the gain of what you don't want really drives this fear. This fear creates anxiety, and what the anxiety is essentially creating us on heightened alert in order to get away from the predator, if it's something you don't want in your life, or to gain what you perceive that you could potentially lose or you have lost. You want that back, or you're chasing that. And so it's that get away from the predator, get the prey mentality. And that's very much running your life. And whilst we're in that mode, the body is in preservation, it's in survival, and it's going to hold on to everything you've got. So it will hold on to fat stores, it will hold on to stools or waste products, because it doesn't know when this threat's going to go away. And so it goes into preservation mode. You'll feel lethargic, and because the toxins aren't getting out, you're not digesting the food, and it's simply because your body's in survival mode. And what we ultimately need to do is tell the body it's okay. It's okay. Like, your life isn't at threat. It's a real primitive instinct, anxiousness, when we're threatened. But today's threats aren't life threatening, but we can't distinguish, or the mind is not distinguishing the difference. It just has a primitive reflex, and that's to turn off the gut. Because you think about it, when you're running away from a predator, doesn't matter about digesting that last meal, because you might not live, right? So it stops doing that, and it gives you all the energy to get away from the predator. It's the same as the prey. if you're chasing prey, then all the energy goes into exerting yourself to get the prey. And it's thinking, well, it doesn't matter if I've got something in my stomach now, it can digest later. I need to get this prey. If I don't get this prey, I might not be around next week. So again, that survival mentality will be running us when we're anxious. And so it's really important to dissolve the anxiousness or whatever's causing the anxiousness to get help for that, because then the brain will then send a signal to the gut to say, look, you're safe, you're secure, you can now digest the food. And so it's really important that we deal with anxiety as opposed to brushing it aside and running from it, because sometimes we'll run from these things and think they will just go away, but we'll keep getting reminders of it in everywhere in our life. So what we resist will persist. And so if you're resisting something, resisting resolving something, resolving issues, and you keep running, and the running is the way in which you cope with it, it will catch up with you. It will eventually catch you, and it will manifest in a chronic disease such as these big ones that we don't like talking about, cancer, these really autoimmune conditions. These things will manifest in a big way if you don't deal with these things that you're not coping with. So get help. Make sure you deal with the anxiety so that the body can then start to function again. Because whilst you're anxious, the body's not doing the repair work. It's not digesting the food and it's not doing the repair work. So if the repair work's not happening, just like a car, it will eventually break down.
Yeah, I think that's very true, especially in this age, this time. A lot of people, we've been raised to just hustle, work, not actually leave that fight or flight. There's a time and place for fight or flight, but a lot of people don't even realize, oh, I can actually be in rest and digest, and I can, take the day to actually relax. So many people, they're sick all the time because they're not letting their bodies fully heal. And this is, then they're constantly just in this cycle of they feel better, they go out and they over exercise and they work themselves into the ground, and then they get sick again and they just can't, figure out, why am I actually not getting 100%? Well, because you're constantly in this fight or flight and you're not letting your body actually take a breather and take a break. And this isn't just reflective of, your gut health, and it's so much more your like cognitive performance. Even in the gym, if you're someone who goes to the gym a lot and you're not giving yourself any time to actually have a rest and recover, you're not going to see any benefits because your body's just constantly like, what is going on? I can't have time to, feel good again. And it's so prevalent these days because we've just, we're taught to, we have to be always on, always doing something, not taking the time to just sit down and be present and, meditate, read a book, go to the beach, just fully relax. It's definitely the work culture is, it can be great at times, but as well, you do need to give your body a break. And I feel like a lot of people, they work, they go on holidays, and then they go on holidays and they get sick. And they're like, why am I sick now? Why? Well, your body's finally in rest and digest, and it's actually like, oh, hang on. We need to, get rid of all these toxins that have been built up because we haven't given ourselves a break. And then they get stressed. Oh, now I'm on holidays and I'm sick. And then you just go back into this cycle. But if you can practice and implement just little changes in your day and taking 5 minutes to meditate and reading your book at night instead of, watching another Netflix episode or scrolling on your phone, taking the time to sit at a dinner table and eat your dinner versus watching the TV or eating your meal on the go in the car, actually taking a lunch break. A lot of people, I was too busy, I didn't have time to eat and I haven't eaten since like 7 p.m. yesterday. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, if I did that, I wouldn't be functioning.
It's really important what you raise, because we have this society that's seeking more happiness, right? But we can't be happy when we're running away from a predator or chasing prey that we think that we could potentially lose, right? So that's doom or gloom, both scenarios, right? We don't get the prey and we're thinking, oh, we're going to starve. or we don't get away from the predator and we don't get a chance to think. And so we cannot be happy in a busy state. It's simple. The only way happiness can happen is in a state of relaxation. It's where you're not under threat. You're not in survival mode. You're in a like secure surroundings. You feel safe, and that is the basis of having a foundation of of feeling satisfied with life and feeling happy about yourself. Really starts with, as you said, taking time, taking breaks, and slowing down, because that enables us to enjoy our surroundings, to be present with our surroundings. Because whilst we're busy, we've got all these hundreds of things in our minds everywhere, right? And we we're not really connecting with anything, and we miss so many opportunities to be grateful. We miss so many opportunities, to express our gratitude towards someone. We miss the opportunities of feeling content and satisfied and happy, just because we're constantly doing and we're not being. And I really love what you just suggested is, do more being, because ultimately, when we're in that relaxed state, we can access more neural pathways in our brain, and this brings out creativity. It brings out more productive ways of moving forward, as opposed to when we're stressed, we only go with what we know, only with what's hardwired within us. So we'll go to a default mode when we're stressed, and that default mode might not be the fastest, most efficient path to doing something. And so by doing what Stella's suggesting, relaxing, we actually become more productive, and we actually free up more time to relax because we're more efficient with our time. And so it's absolutely unproductive and really not going to serve you long term if you're in this hustle culture. There's so much more satisfaction when when we do what Stella says, is take those regular breaks, take time out. And it's in those moments we take time out, we reflect, and we are thankful. We think about all the people that have helped us get through the day or helped us get through that challenge, and we can express that gratitude, and when we express gratitude, we're so much more satisfied with life. We feel so much more supported. But when we're in that hustle, we just think we are lost amongst the challenge, and we get disorientated, and we can get quite lost in that hustle culture. And then we start chasing these more impulsive things to make us feel better. And these impulsive things are things that don't serve us long term, such as drugs, alcohol, smoking, vaping, junk food, just I guess, porn and gambling. All these things are sort of these impulsive things that may give us some fulfillment short term, but long term, they just end up this spiral, because that becomes our coping mechanism. So the drug addiction becomes the way in which we cope with ourselves and not dealing with our life and stuff like that. So it really creates this spiral out of control. And I think it's really important that if you're starting to feel that you've lost this connection with food, is that you start doing something about it. Reach out to a professional and really get help. The earlier you get help, the faster the recovery. The longer you allow yourself to spiral and just think, oh, it will eventually just heal itself, or it will just, I'll just grow out of it or something. That is not a great way of dealing with, so if you're not coping, you want to get support, because when we're not coping, it means the challenge is too great for us in relation to the resources we have and the skill set that we have to deal with it. And so what we need to do is narrow that gap by reaching out, getting help, and increasing that support base to meet the challenge. And once that challenge is met, that's when we can move forward. But whilst we allow that gap between support and challenge, and the bigger that gap, the greater our distress is. When we get this challenge to meet the support, that's when we grow and thrive. And so if you're feeling overwhelmed and don't know where to turn to and feel like you're running away from problems, that's a great cue to get professional help and bring up that support base, narrow the gap so that you can actually move forward.
Yeah, I think on that topic, a lot of people don't even realize that they are that this way that they're feeling. I shouldn't actually feel this way. This isn't normal, but it's become so normalized
Hmm.
to feel this way, and because they're so busy, they don't have time to look inward and actually reflect and be like, I actually shouldn't be feeling like crap every day, and I shouldn't feel this stress, and I shouldn't be have these mood swings, and I shouldn't be so impulsive. It's a reflection of what's going on inside, and if you're in this fight or flight, you're going to have outbursts more often, and you're going to have more brain fog, and you're not going to be as present for your family, for your friends, in relationships. And people don't even realize that this isn't a normal way to feel. They just feel this baseline. They don't feel this optimal level because they don't know any better. They don't have the time or the tools to actually look inward and be like, I actually shouldn't be feeling like this. How should I actually be feeling, and how am I going to achieve this? They just look for, like you said, these gambling, drugs, drinking. They look for that quick dopamine hit, and then they go, yep, that serves me. But if you can, teach your brain that that's actually not going to serve me, and these more fulfilling, meaningful, being present, these kinds of things will give me a good source of dopamine and a more long term, not just that short quick fix, which I think a lot of people are looking for, not just in the dopamine, but quick fix for I'm feeling like crap, I'm just going to take this pharmaceutical. I just want that quick fix. I don't have the time to look at the root cause and look at what's actually causing me this problem. They want the quickest solution, the cheapest solution. And it's something that I think has been lost over the last 100 years. My grandparents, and their parents, they probably they have all these remedies and stuff, and now it's just, you got a headache, just have some Panadol. It's not, take the time to drink more water and relax and just have a nap. It's been lost, because of this hustle, fight or flight, working on this, just driving. Our fuel is just this chronic stress. Yeah.
And yeah, I think that reminded me of another point that you raised earlier, that I'm just drawing the connection between the two, is like the hustle. Like, people feel that they're fitting in because everyone else is saying, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm so full, I've got so many things on, so so busy. And it seems to be like a trendy thing, or a fabulous thing to be in this busy state. And you raised that point before, is that some people can get what they want eventually, but then when they get there, they're still dissatisfied. And it's because they're hustling for something that's not meaningful to them. Like, they're just copying someone else, and they're thinking, oh, this person's got a side hustle, they're plus a job, and they've got a partner, and that's what life's all about. I've got to have the same as them. That they look like they're having a fabulous time, and I think I want that. I want to feel like them, or look like them, or be like them, or have the success that they're having. And so they chase similar goals. And then, as you said, they then eventually get one or two of them, and they get there and they're thinking, oh, I'm still feeling very dissatisfied with life. And it's because they were hustling for the wrong goal that's not meaningful to them. And so it really gets back to that earlier point that you brought up, is this individualistic approach, is that we need to connect with who we are and eat based on how we're, what our body's telling us that we need. And I often find my women clients are very intuitive as to what, like, their body's telling them where they're nutritionally deficient. And so I often ask the women clients, is and the women that are listening, you want to tap into this intuition that you have, is that when you're craving something, it's often deficient in your body. And I see that when I look at their diet diary, and I hear about their symptomatic profile, and then they're telling me, I'm craving this food, and I'm thinking, wow, that's the connection between why you've got these signs and symptoms. I'm looking at your diet, it's not there, and your body's telling you that you need it. And so I really want the women out there. I think, women have this great connection, and I think what it appears to be much better with women than men. And I think tap into that intuition, and go with what Stella recommended, which is that intuitive eating, because your body will tell you ultimately. If you, I guess the only premise or disclaimer I have over this is, if you're highly emotional, then you might be getting the wrong signals. But if you've got regulation over your emotions, then tap into what your body's telling you. But first of all, you have to regulate your emotions, just like Stella said, and that's relax more, take more time out for yourself, and do the things that you love. That will put you in a relaxed state. Then your body will tell you what you need, and then do what Stella said, just intuitively eat, because your body is telling you what you actually are needing at that point in time.
Yeah, and I think a big thing as well is comparing. So many people are comparing what the person next to them is doing, what their partner is doing, what their friends are doing. And at the end of the day, comparison is the killer of joy. If you're going to constantly be comparing what you're eating, what you're doing, what you're not doing, how you exercise, and how much sleep you're getting versus the person next to you, you're constantly not going to be fulfilled, because you're going to be trying to achieve someone else's goals, or how someone else is living their life. And I think that also comes to comparing to who you were a few years ago. I know I've been guilty of, being like, oh, I don't look the same as I did, 3 years ago. And I think that's a big thing for women in terms of the changes we go through, menarche, all throughout puberty, pregnancy, perimenopause, and menopause, all those hormonal changes. And women are constantly going, well, hang on, my body's not the same as it was pre-pregnancy, and I need to get back to that state. But why don't you just, take a second to be like, I have birthed a child. My body has gone through something so amazing, and I should love my body for its ability to do this, and love it through all its stages. The comparison to other people, but the comparison to who you were 5, 10, 15 years ago is also massive. And I think that those hormonal changes through those life stages is also a massive driver of body image issues. Have you seen that in clinic as well?
Yeah, it's a great point that you bring up, Stella, and I must say you're a superstar on podcasts. Like you are amazing for you. I think this is your first podcast, but you really have an incredible talent. So I just wanted to just take the moment to say how in awe and inspired I am seeing you just embrace this and run with something you've never done before. It's incredible. So thank you. So that comparison is really well. First of all, you're not them. Second, you have a completely you weren't brought onto planet Earth to be a copy of someone else. You were given the right to life to be the best version of yourself, and there's no one else on this planet that is the same as you. And so the uniqueness is just being you. And so it's like when you're trying to be a copycat, you'll always be second to being that other person, because you're not them. And the only time you'll shine and be a superstar is being you, embracing you, and running with the talents that you've been given. Everyone's been given some blessing, and it's really identifying that and leveraging it, and really focusing on those superpowers of you. And I think too often we get focused and fixated on the things that we wish we had that someone else has got, and we lose sight of our superpowers. And that same person's looking back at us and thinking, I wish I had this about you. And you get them in. Both people are both dissatisfied with who they are, and both want what they don't have. But ultimately, it's because they're not focusing on their gift. And so I want everyone that's listening to really harness that gift that you've been given. You'll know what it is. People will tell you that you have a unique, like I'm telling Stella, like I think she's an awesome podcaster. So I think she's very natural at this. So I think that comparison, I totally agree. It's just soul destroying, and it essentially deflates you, and it's never going to help rise you and to help you be the best version of you. And the other thing I just wanted to pick up on, Stella raised a really good point, is that with life, it's constantly transforming, and the world around us is constantly transforming. Nothing is still. It may appear still, but it's busy, right? It's moving. It's moving. Everything around us, even though it appears stationary, is actually moving. We know this through physics, through through the quantum lens of physics. So we know that nothing is stagnant or still. In actual fact, life is constantly transforming and evolving. And so, why do we want to resist this beautiful thing about life? The fact that it's so transformatable. Like, why do, like, for me, like, I don't want to be that person I was 10 years ago. Think about that 10 years of experiences I've had, the connections I've had, or the, I guess, growth I've had over that year. So my life is constantly transforming, and it's embracing that transformation. So as Stella said, like, embrace womanhood. It's amazing. Like, for me as a male, thinking I can never do that, and I wonder what it would be like, and I can never experience that. And so if I was a female, I'm thinking, well, I'm having this experience that only females can have. Embrace it, and like that, like, and embrace that transformation, because if you resist it, you'll be miserable. If you embrace transformation, you'll always be growing and thriving, and you'll be the best version of you. That the moment we resist change, it's going to happen inevitably, because life is in a constant state of flux. It doesn't stand still. Nothing stands still. Everything is moving. And so we have the best way in which we can do this is to be agile and to be adaptable, resilient, and flexible. Like, if we fixate ourselves on a body image we had during our teenage years, we're only going to be miserable, because we've moved. Time's moved. Like, so, like, you go back, and the thing is, what you want to start doing is balance what it was like with that body back then, because what you're focused and fixated on is the upside, and you've shut out what you're unconscious of. Why don't you, if you balance the perspective of back then you're thinking, oh, it was just back then. But it's because you've got this imbalanced perspective, this ratio of perceptions that are distorting the upside and suppressing the downside, and you're only taking away a one-sided experience, and that is creating this attachment to the past. So the only way you can move on is actually balance your perceptions of what it was like having that body. It wasn't all great. There was some downsides of having the body the way it was. And what you want to do is embrace the body as it is now and look for the upsides, because what you're doing is, again, distorting reality. You're exaggerating the downside, or the distaste, or the disgust you have about some element of your body. Look for how it benefits you, serves you. And, like, so I often get this with women. Like, so women, when they're young and youthful, they just want, like, this hip line that's sort of, I don't know, like, you don't have the typical woman shape, right? You sort of have this model hip line that is pretty much no hips, right? And most women have a traditional woman body shape, right, which has got hips. And they're saying to me, I just want to be like this model. I just want to have that. And I'm telling you, like, I say to them, I said, well, have you looked into the future and looked at why women have wider hips? Because they're ultimately, if they're going to reproduce, that's how the baby gets out, right? So these women that don't have hips, if they want to have children, then they have a horrendous birthing process, right? Whereas those with wider hips, it just flies out. It's not, I'm exaggerating here, but again, there's pros and cons no matter what body shape you have. And the problem is, we get fixated on one and we don't see it as it is. We distort reality. We create fantasies and create nightmares, and that's a distortion of reality. What I'm encouraging the listeners to do is get mindful and see both sides and see things as they are. See your body as it is, as opposed to distorting a particular body part of it and only looking for the bad of it. If you've got distortion anywhere in your body, or even things that you're proud of, start looking at the downside, start neutralizing and seeing it as it is, and it serves, and there's disadvantages to everything, pros and cons to everything in life. And we don't want to distort reality and create illusions of reality and distortion. So that will just make us miserable. So I hope that helps in terms of that, allowing the transformation and the growth of who you are, and embracing life as it is, that moment as your body is at the moment. There's pros and cons to my aging body, right? So, but I don't distort it as to, I just get fixated on knee pain or sore hips or whatever. I don't distort the reality. It is what it is, and I embrace the transformation of it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get frustrated with, I've had this knee pain for 10 years and it's just not getting better, or I've had this hormonal imbalance for so long, and but they're forgetting, your body has gotten you this far, and your body is doing so much that you don't realize on the insides. Like it's chipping away at so many different things. It's doing a multitude of activities as we speak, and people forget. They hyperfixate on this one thing that is wrong, or they've been told is wrong. I know I'm guilty of doing that, so fixated on, why can't I fix this, like what is going wrong, but actually saying, you know what, buddy, you're doing what you're meant to be doing. And yes, there is work that we can be doing, but you are also doing a lot of other things, embracing your body for everything that it is doing behind the scenes, and what it is capable of doing. If you're constantly going to be, why is my body like this? Why is nothing working? Then you're not going to allow your body the space to, if you have that thing that you want to work on, you're not giving your body the ability to actually get to where you want it to be, because you're just holding yourself back by, fixating on this negative or this health issue. If you're embracing, my body is capable of so much, you will achieve so much more.
It really plays into that transformation, is that nothing is created or destroyed, but only transformed from one form to another. And so that's a universal law. So if you look at the universal law, is that we actually never lose our health problems. It just transforms into a new health problem. So if I go back to the earliest of memories of my life, I've had a health problem with me all my life. It's just transformed. So in the earlier days, it was ENT, it was ear, nose, throat infections, and getting grommets inserted, and having my tonsils removed. And then in my teenage years, it was acne, and really bad acne, and being loaded up with drugs to deal with the acne. In my 20s, 30s, I had candida, which I still with me today, in the toes, and I had injuries back then as well. So I had health problems throughout my 20s and 30s. In my 40s, I've been diagnosed with a heart condition. So for me, we've always got health and not have health. Like we have good health, and there's also not so good health. It's always with it. And it's just transforming it. Everything just transforms. It just moves from one form to a different form, but it's always there. And so I think it's crazy for us to think that we will have a period of our life where we won't have any health issues. In actual fact, that's a fantasy. So, and as much as I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, the reality is that if anyone looks back at their life, they've had some sort of health issue throughout every phase of their life. And I'm just letting the listeners know that, no matter what decade you're entering, there will be a transformation in terms of a health issue. It will turn into something else. And so back to Stella's point, you just got to do the best with what you've got, right? So you just best manage it the way you can manage it. So for Stella, as opposed to saying, oh, this knee injury, go away, I don't want you. It's just working with the knee. It's embracing it, saying, this is where the knee's at. This is what the knee's capable of doing. I'm just going to work with it. So that is much more helpful, is sort of acknowledging it, accepting it, that it's there, and just working with the body to do your best. And it's just doing your best. Like, I still have these candida in my toes, and I've done unbelievable amounts of naturopathic herbal remedies, gut health protocols. I've done all sorts of treatment, medical treatment, drugs, all of it, right? There's something I haven't done that obviously might help it, but I've tried dissolving emotional issues of the past and thinking that might allow it to go away. It's still with me today, and so I I don't detest it. It's just part of me. I do my best to work through it, but I'm not loathing it, and it's just part of who I am, and I accept it as part of. It's been with me for a good 20 years. So yeah, it's been a good part of my life.
I guess one of my last questions would be is what would your advice be to mainly women but also men from your clinical perspective? How can they best support their bodies and body image issues, mental health issues, in terms of nutrition, even everyday practices? What would you say is your best advice for people like that?
Yeah. So I think ultimately it's finding and loving who they are. So going on that self discovery journey, finding out who you are, and that requires reflection. And as you said, you need to be still and quiet, and you can't. The more you keep doing the hustle, the more you're running away from it. So it's being able to sit with yourself and listen to yourself, listen to what thoughts are going around, journal. And as I said, if you're struggling to do this work, then seek professional help that can help guide you through it. So that's really important, is to ultimately you need to go on this self-discovery journey in order to heal yourself, because in that self-discovery journey you'll find out who you are, you'll be more accepting of who you are, you'll then embrace your superpowers, and then you'll go off on a massive thriving trajectory, and everything will be just a thing of the past, your eating disorders or disordered eating. Now, around part of this journey needs to be healing the relationship with food. And so it's not that you got to do more calorie counting or label or judge food. It's working with someone, just like Stella said, someone that can coach you to be more intuitive and reconnect with food. And there is nutritionists like Stella out there that can help guide. And I know Stella's still finishing her studies, but she's doing pre-clinic, and so she'll start her clinic time under supervision. And so if you're out there and you're struggling with disordered eating, I suggest you reach out, seek Stella in clinic. It's in the city. So anyway, we'll include the links in the show notes for you to reach out and get support via Stella through the clinic, because I've been wrapped with what you've had to share, Stella. I think you're a shining star, and this star that's already shining bright. So, but yeah, so seek help. Seek help in the area that you feel that you're most struggling in. So if it's with food and the relationship with food, then reach out to Stella. See her in clinic. If you're not in Sydney and reach out to a nutritionist that specializes in disordered eating or eating disorders. If you're struggling with who you are and loathing, detesting your body or anything part of your body, and you're constantly self-sabotaging and comparing, and then seek an expert that can, and this is a psychologist that specializes in disordered eating or eating disorders. So reach out to a specialist and get help in that area that you most need it. But other than that, it's really going on a journey and embracing the journey. So I think just realizing that what you'll like most reflecting back. So once you get over the eating disorder, so once you sort of fast forward and it's a thing of the past, what you'll reflect back on is who you become in that process of overcoming that challenging thing, which was the eating disorder. So embrace that journey. So don't think that I just want to be there tomorrow, I just want to get rid of this eating disorder. Go on the journey, embrace it, and you will really love who you become in that process. And the more you embrace the process, the more you're not, I guess, impatient, and because you're enjoying the journey. So embrace the journey, embrace every day of the journey, and you will get there if you embrace what I've shared in terms of seeking help where you need help, and allowing time for this disorder to transform, and it will transform, right? It's going to transform. So it's just allowing that transformation into something else, but just being aware that something else will emerge. So it's not going to, health problems won't leave you. I can assure you that it's part of the law of conservation, that nothing's created or destroyed, but only transformed from one form to another, and that's in all aspects of life. So that's it. No, I think in concluding, I really want to give Stella a wrap. She's been amazing stepping into this space of unknown and not having done a podcast, not knowing what it's like, but having the courage to step forward into a new space, embracing it. So Stella's absolutely immersed herself into it today. She's been way better than what I was when I first started. Like, amazing. Like, you actually, this is a superpower of yours, is your ability to communicate naturally, fluently, comfortably, confidently. You have this superpower. So I've recognized the superpower in you today, Stella, and I really want you to take this forward in your way, in the way you want to take it forward. So thank you so much, Stella.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a great experience. It's something I definitely want to, when I am in, once I've done clinic, and I feel like one of my big passions is educating others, because it was an education that we didn't get through school, or through other learning. And I think that if you have, education is empowerment, and if you do know these things, and the more people you can help and educate them, the better off you'll be, and the world will be, if we can learn to like fuel ourselves correctly and feel good about ourselves, and how the tools and skills in order to do that comes through education. So yeah, I think it's really important. And podcasting is something I've been listening to. I've been listening to podcasts for years, on long drives. I love a good podcast. It's a great way for me to get my information. It's one way that I learn. So yeah, I think it's really great that you have this platform that you can, speak to people and put out this kind of information, because a lot of people, they can't afford to, see specialists. So at least if they can get tools like this, that they can, be influenced, maybe, oh, you know what, I'll find a way to make it work, and, to find out how I can best help my body. So yeah, thank you.
It's a good point, Stella. It's just taking that step that you're ready for and that you're able to take in terms of financial, no matter what your position, but it's just moving forward in a direction that you're taking some action. You're not allowing the hustle culture just to drift you away, and hopefully that the problem will just go away. And that's not the case. Yeah, thank you again, Stella. And Stella, how can the listeners best connect with you if they're really keen to seeing you in, you're about to start clinic, so I'm sure there's some interest as to wanting to reach out and book an appointment with you.
I don't think I'll be doing a clinic till probably mid next year. But I do have a little Instagram page. It's just a very small page. It's called Quadrants of Health. I haven't been as active on there, with uni, but I do post some stuff and what I'm up to, and ways that I, do things for myself. I will be on there more once, I have the time, and got to, take a moment for me as well. Like we've been talking about, constantly go, 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 but I need to, take a step back and, do the stuff that I like doing. And one of those things is helping people and educating them. So there will be, more stuff on there. But when I am in student clinic, I'll definitely be open. I like to help everyone. There's obviously stuff that I'm more, I guess, interested in. But if you can, expand your horizons, expand your education and my abilities, it's one thing to challenge myself, see people that I wouldn't normally, and educate myself and help people on stuff that I'm not as comfortable in, because at the end of the day, it will help me to get more comfortable, and challenging yourself, is a great part of growth. So yeah.
100%. I'll include the link to your Instagram page in the show notes, so the listeners can go to the show notes and access your Instagram page and follow you and follow your journey. And when you open the clinic doors, I'm sure you're going to be flooded with potential clients. So thank you so much, Stella. You have absolutely been a stellar star in this podcast, and I we'll certainly have you back to continue to educate the listeners of Me and My Health Up. So you will be back. I'll invite you back on the show, and I'd love to have another chat with you sometime in the future. And to the listeners, thank you for continuing to support the show. I really appreciate your support, and continue to health up. Podcast disclaimer. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions or statements within it do not constitute medical, healthcare or professional advice and are provided for general information purposes only. All care is taken in the preparation of the information in this podcast. Connected Wellness Proprietary Limited, operating under the brand Me and My Health Up, does not make any representations or give any warranties about its accuracy, reliability, completeness, or suitability for any particular purpose. This podcast and any information, advice, opinions, or statements within it are not to be used as a substitute for professional, medical, psychological, psychiatric, or any other mental health care or healthcare in general. Me and My Health Up recommends you seek the advice of a doctor or qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Inform your doctor of any changes that you may to your lifestyle and discuss these with your doctor. Do not disregard medical advice or delay visiting a medical professional because of something you hear in this podcast. This podcast has been carefully prepared on the basis of current information. Changes in circumstances after publication may affect the accuracy of this information. To the maximum extent permitted by the law, Me and My Health Up disclaims any such representations or warranties to the completeness, accuracy, merchantability, or fitness for purpose of this podcast and will not be liable for any expenses, losses, damages incurred, indirect or consequential damages or costs that may be incurred as a result of the information being inaccurate or incomplete in any way and for any reason. No part of this podcast can be reproduced, redistributed, published, copied, or duplicated in a form without prior permission of Me and My Health Up.